content on YouTube, Anchor, and anywhere various podcasts are found. And make sure you check out our products at Jagged Tooth Co. Vintage Store. We got plenty of shirts and merchandise there. So, we're going to actually get ready after our little advertisement run. Sorry, guys, got to pay the bills. So, after our little advertisement run there, we are going to have a fun little topic today. Today, we're going to discuss remakes so good you forgot about the original, and remakes so bad you went back to the original. On the Real Sharks podcast. So, what's going on, Steve? So the first one I want to bring up, Steve, about this topic, and it's an obvious one, and for all of you who want to sit there and Google along with us, go ahead, because you didn't know this. That's why you're watching this episode right now. So I thank you all for listening, and you want to know this information. So because you don't want to get caught up when the next remake comes out, and you're like, oh yeah, I know that was a remake on a remake. Anyway. So the first one's an obvious one, Steve, and I think it's still relevant to this day. Of course, right now for me because I just showed it to my little minnow, minnow real shark, and that was The Thing, 1982. Of course, starring Kurt Russell, one of the most scariest horror films ever produced and made, some of the greatest special effects ever accomplished. But many people don't know it is actually a remake of a film called The Thing from Another World, made in 1951, directed by Christian Nibby, Howard Hawks, with Kenneth Tobey, Margaret Sheridan, and James Arness, Robert Cornwait. And basically, it's the same story, but the remake just upped the ante on the horror and the gore. But essentially, the film is exactly the same. Of course, not the whole the test, but
Yeah,
there is still the premise of who is who,
yeah,
and that's really what the thing kind of derives, and what the remake did as well as the first one is just that like the game Among Us, who's the killer.
yes, yeah, yeah. This is a fantastic film, man. This is like one of it's. I don't even think it's just like the mecca of horror films. I just think it was like just the take on what thriller was and is and everything. This is the thing. It had practical effects. I think you've mentioned this before, Rob, like how amazing the effects were and the puppetry and stuff like this. It was just
Right.
crazy. This was a
And
fantastic
that's
film.
why people forget that it's actually a remake. And not only is the story the homage to the remake, I mean to the original, which is great, but that also the title in which you see that kind of where it's burning up and you see the image of the thing, the title screen, that is actually taken directly from the original as a homage that John Carpenter did. And I love it. I think again, I can go on and on forever about the thing, but this is not a special about the thing. This is a special about remakes. So, would you agree, Steve, that that's one remake that people forget there's an original to?
Oh yeah, for sure. No one really knows of the original one all that much. Usually because people either say, "Oh, this is not really a remake; it's a spiritual successor," but it really is a remake. They just
It's a
retold it,
remake.
but it was so good that you didn't know. So
Right.
great.
Uh, all right. Here's an interesting one. Sorry. I want to know what your opinion is on this, Steve. Whether it belongs on this list or not. I believe it does, and I personally added it to this list, and that was The Hills Have Eyes, 2006, and then is a remake, of course, of The Hills Have Eyes, 1977, done by, directed by the master of horror himself, Wes Craven. 2006 was directed by Alexandra Haja. Um, what you know, First of all, I just want to say too, I'm not a big fan of The Hills Have Eyes. I think
Oh,
I'm not. And for those of you who have never seen The Hills Have Eyes, it's basically about a family who gets stuck out in the, you know, bumfuck nowhere, and they basically end up to the victims of these radiated, you know, hellspawn people
that
who
just
are
like
there.
live in the mountains, right?
Yeah, and they're there because of the radiation poisoning from all the nuclear tests that the U.S. did back in the day. Um, This is one I think people really do forget there is a remake. I mean, there is an original of it. See, I mean, even I'm having trouble. This is one I do believe that people forget there is a an original of it. What do you think, Steve? Do you like The Hills Have Eyes? I mean, have you seen
Yeah,
both
yeah, I
versions?
saw. Yeah, I saw both versions. This is a weird one to me. You're right about that, dude. Like people don't. They always reference the 2006 version. I'm like, well, how did you not know that Michael Berryman was in the original one? Like that was his, breakout role into films. You know what I mean? He was in like a lot of things. He was like in the X Files. I remember after that he was in an episode. He was in an episode of Nickelodeon's Keenan and Kel. But the Hill Have Eyes, the 1977 version, was more so kind of like I don't even know. I
Direct
wouldn't say
horror?
like, yeah, like it was more so like
Because
a psychedelic thing. Like it was kind
because
of
I think The Hills Have
weird one.
Eyes came out because it came out in 2006, and this is like during the midst of the gore fest of films where
Oh yeah,
films were just trying to be as shocking and gory as possible because of
rather
films
than
like Saw.
scary. Yeah,
Right. So it's interesting because The Hills Have Eyes 2006 has a higher rating than the original one. Although I think there's more to the original one than you know, people give it credit for. I think the original is great. Again, I'm not a big fan of The Hills Have Eyes. I'm kind of biased, so I think the original is actually better, but
I
that's
agree.
just my take on it.
Yeah,
But some people forget that one. So here's a good one I thought would be really interesting to bring to the table, and I wanted to see if I can get you with this one, Steve, because I was doing it with the trailers from lesser known horror films of the 1970s, and I really came across this one. And I was like, I did not know this was a remake, and I already gave it away, but 2006, When a Stranger Calls, and then there's two
mm.
1979's When a Stranger Calls,
When a stranger
which
calls. Yeah.
is absolutely more horrifying than the 2006 one.
Oh my gosh, you are
Same exact,
100%
same,
correct.
same exact plot, same exact everything, except the guy's voice for hold on. The guy's voice for the 1979 version is just so chilling to the bone. I mean, I don't get
Mhm.
that much scared of films or like when they kind of they don't have a psychological effect on me because I've seen so many over the years, and I'm not trying to be, smell my own farts here. I'm just being honest. But that was,
Desensitized.
yeah, that was a film that definitely when I watched it, I was like, oh, that voice is just a little too chilling for me. I don't like the sound of that voice. It direct
Yeah.
goes up your spine to there's something wrong here with
Do you
this
think
guy.
like the set? Do you think like the 70s kind of vibe to the film too? Kind of put it for me. It was more like uneasy because it felt more like real, like vulnerable. Because the 2006,
Yeah,
another 2006 film that was just like something about it, the lighting or like how unnatural this woman just. I don't
it
know. It was
suffers.
just something about that. It just didn't feel like it was real to me. You know what I mean? Like the 90s,
Right.
the 70s felt real.
And it's crazy too because when like I said, I only knew about the 2006 one, and again the original 1979 one was directed by Fred Walton, and the 2006 one was directed by Simon West. And it's funny because the 1979 one does get a higher rating by a large margin. And when I seen the 2006 one, I just remember thinking to myself like, this is an interesting premise, but it's really stupid. Like, I just thought it
Super
was
dumb.
super dumb. And then when I seen the 1979 one, I was like, okay, this is terrifying. Like this would actually be something real, like you were saying, and scary because especially during the 70s, when they didn't have cell phones. But I really do enjoy When a Stranger Calls. Again, it's another one like I'm sure people forget that there is a remake from the 2006 one. So definitely if you've never seen either one of them, our listeners, make sure you definitely check them out because these are actually pretty good horror films.
In a row. Watch the 79 version first and then the 2006.
Right. I agree. I want to bring up some films that have been remade so many times. You don't know where they begin, you don't know where they started or where they end. So I just want to list a few of all of these, and we'll go just there's just a couple of them. Invasion of the Body Snatchers has been remade quite a few times.
Countless
Um,
times.
War of the Worlds has been remade, TV shows and movies. You also have the Shaggy Dog has been remade countless times.
Countless time. Yep.
And I'm going to give it in because I don't know again when I will be able to mention this film, but it is a film I think that holds glory to its own. It's a Disney forgotten film, and it gave birth to all the Air Bud franchises, and that is Gus. You may
The
disagree with
forgotten
me.
one.
You
The
may disagree
forgotten
with
one.
me, but Gus does need to be mentioned as being the inspiration for so many goddamn remakes of
Yes,
animals
that is
playing on sports teams.
that is very true. If it wasn't for Gus, you wouldn't get all of these like dog films. The Chihuahua and Hollywood or whatever, but Air
Playing
Bud,
sports, anything
Homeward
that
Bound.
playing anything's playing sports. Anytime they're like, "You thought you said a dog can't play basketball. That parrot can't play basketball." It's like, Gus, I won't let you be
No,
forgotten,
yeah,
Gus.
yeah. Do it for Don Knotts, man.
That's what I'm saying. Now we're gonna move into remakes so bad they made you love the original all more. And I think there is an obvious one here. And I mean, I don't know, Steve, how to tell you this because I am almost ashamed to be speaking about this film, and that is 2015's Point Break, directed by Eric Sincor with Edgar Ramirez, Luke Bracey, Way Winstone, Teresa Palmer. Um, this one had FBI agent infiltrates an extraordinary sports athletes. Basically, they're not even surfers; they're just extreme sports
Yeah.
athletes. How can I say this? In the most calming way. Um, how dare you try to remake
Yeah.
1991's Point Break? And that was directed by Catherine Bigelow, and that starred the Patrick Swayze, late great Patrick Swayze, I should say, Keanu Reeves, Gary Busey, Lori Petty. And of course, that one is about an FBI agent who infiltrates a gang of surfers who are basically bank robbers, and he ends up getting too close to Patrick Swayze as a friend. Then he doesn't know whether or not he wants to turn him in or not. Then they basically went off and remade that into Fast and Furious about a million times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
Oh
back to
man.
Point Break.
It was
1991's Point Break is it perfect, and this is, I believe, a perfect film. This is why this film cannot be matched. It is a film that encompasses the idea of conformity and non-conformity.
Conformist. Yeah.
That's right. No, I'm not joking because you have Keanu Reeves, who is basically conformity. He is the guy that's grows up. He's a guy that's grown. Patrick Swayze, and they even say it. They call him the Bodhisattva. He's wild. He's big wave riding man. He's about the thrill, and they even say it in the film, which I love so much because the film is definitely about um, going against the system. And that is
yeah.
pointed out directly in the film when Patrick Swayze says it was never about the money. It was always about us against the system, about the
Yeah.
system that kills the human spirit. That's what he was originally they were robbing banks for initially. And they're all like, yeah, man. Like, yeah, but the best part of it, and the reason too, and Steve, you're kind of already hearing some of my argument for our special, is one of the best things about it too is the end. The end is absolutely incredible because even though Keanu Reeves gets his friend, like he gets there after Patrick Swayze was talking about the 40-year-old storm, and he tracks him all the way down to Australia, and he's like, just let me. He's like, I can't go in a cage, man. Let me go out there and catch one wave, man, just one wave.
Yeah. One
And
way. Yeah.
and he's like, all right, just lets him go. And they're like, why'd you let him go? We'll get him when he comes back in. And he's like, he's not coming back, and because he knew that wildness was gonna kill him. That extreme nature, that living unconformed, wild, will get you in the end.
Hmm.
And I think that's what that film really, really represents. It represents the battle against conformity and nonconformity, against literally conforming the human wild spirit. And you think it sounds stupid, but it really is the premise of the movie. Every actor meets their goals in this movie. Like, how does Keanu Reeves have to become a better cop? He has to catch his man. What's stopping him from catching his man? He's too close to him. What does he have to do to fulfill that? He has to get past that friendship. Gary Busey, man, he has to be a better cop. Remember, because they're like, you're too much of a, you're old. No one wants to work with you. How does he have to be a better cop? He has to sacrifice himself for Keanu Reeves. Everybody meets their arc in this film. That's why I said Point Break is a perfect film. And how dare they try to remake it?
So, I don't mind because I feel like this. I think every film in Hollywood will be remade someday. It just will. Like even Untouchables, like Jaws. I feel like Hollywood will remake that movie. Just they
Eventually,
will.
yeah.
So with this movie Point Break, that was like such an original movie for its time, for the premise. It matched the time of like the 90s, you know what I mean? So like skydiving, surfing, but like not overly douchey in a way. Like
That
you know what I mean?
that transition from 80s to 90s.
To 80s to 90s. So you had that like weird early 90s period where it was still 80s, but they were trying to conform to what the 90s identity was. And surfing kind of was that, right? So with the 2015 Point Break, the thing I didn't like were they had to have these dudes be edgy. So how do we have them edgy? Well, let's have them have like tattoos and tribal tattoos and do parkour and do all this other.
Right.
It's like that didn't. I understand they're doing that for like this era. Like they're like, okay, well, we're going to do the extreme of what they're doing now. But it's like the conformed like message going against the system while doing parkour and doing all of it. Something about that was just, it was lost, dude. Like some of the stuff was kind of cool. Like the scenes are all right, but the message of the film was like just 2 thumbs down.
Right.
Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not so extreme and 10 being extremely extreme, I give this a 9.5!
The execution was not there. It felt like it was just guys they got to just act, so you didn't feel like,
anything
like you said,
to them.
Like, so like the thing about, we already talked about it before with Keanu Reeves, right? Like he gets a lot of crap for acting, but this is one of his better movies we talked about.
Right.
And it's like his performance as with a dumb name as Johnny Utah did well. Patrick Swayze with that one last wave, man. Dude, that's a legendary quote of his, all of his movies.
The little hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Yeah, but like, dude, like that line matches the time well. Like they were just like douchebaggy, like type of dudes. You didn't like, you kind of like saw yourself in Patrick Swayze's group. With these people, they were just like hollow and like soulless.
And not to mention they're called the ex-presidents, and they're supposed to be against the system, dressing like the United States government, the highest government officials. You had the Reagan, Nixon, Jimmy Carter. You had the presidents there, and it was interesting because they bust into banks and they're dressed like this and they're telling, like, there's a part where he even says money's good, man, but it ain't worth dying for. They don't go to the vault, they don't get greedy. And it really isn't, again, you kind of feel for that because you're like, oh god, scummy politicians, we all hate them. Of course they would be robbing me, and of course these guys would dress like them to do it. You know what I mean? That's the kind of representation the film, either where it was accidentally going for that or it just kind of stumbled into that. Again, I will say it to the day I die. Point Break, 1991. The reason it can never be remade, the reason when you watch this film, you're like, wow, I could watch it over and over again and still feel fulfilled, is because it's a perfect film. And I'm not saying perfect as in 10 stars. I'm saying perfect as in everything with characters to the moral of the story all comes together in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, Point Break should not have ever been remade.
Yeah. Agreed.
So another movie that we're going to bring up, another remake that was so bad it made you love the original more. And, even though I actually totally disagree with this one with a lot of people, and I know it's Steve's favorite remake of all time. I mean, when Steve found out about this remake, I mean, his butthole clenched and he just jumped off his chair. When, especially, you should see it after he's seen it, and that is 2012's Total Recall, and then
Oh,
of course 1990's Total Recall. 1990 was directed by Paul Verhoeven, starred Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sharon Stone, Michael Ironside, Rachel Tincotton, and then the 2012 one was directed by Len Wiseman, had Colin Farrell as Bakeem, Woodbine, Bryan Cranston, Kate Beckinsale. Um, Same story. Just the literal difference between the two right off the bat, I will tell you all, is in the 2012 one. Spoiler: he does not go to Mars in this one, but it is the exact same story. Basically, a supposed secret agent is having a recollection or reoccurring memories of an event that took place, which he's just coming up to speed for, and he's a secret agent. He's on a secret mission. Do you know
yeah.
whether it's the simulation he's doing? You never know.
Oh, yeah, or is it just him?
Or is it just him? Um, okay, so first of all, I'm gonna just kind of go off and say why I think the remake wasn't that bad.
Oh
And
my God.
I know. You get bad. You get mad at this one. So first of all, I'm just gonna say it, and no disrespect to Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger, no disrespect to Colin Farrell, but I just think it was great that they were like, we'll get two terrible actors to play the lead role. so so you can't really fault them for putting Colin Farrell in there. I mean, I fault them for putting Colin Farrell in there as Alexander because he just was not an Alexander type guy. But I don't fault them for putting him in Total Recall. The real main problem I have with the 2012 one is the 1990 one. You just start off with Arnold's character who's just living his normal life, just hunky dory. You don't really know too much, and then he gets into the simulation to basically become a secret agent, and you don't, and then it's all to hell from there. In the 2012 one, it's interesting because I don't know why they did it, but they literally give it away that he's already a secret agent in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And at
Yep.
that point, I'm like, then what the fuck is the point of watching this? Because there is no point at that point. Because
Right.
the whole idea is to know whether or not he is a secret agent. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to know. Like,
He's supposed to just be a regular guy like Arnold Schwarzenegger character was. He's just a dude who's like working construction and happens upon this ad of what Total Recall was. So you're like figuring out the plot with with the actual main
right,
guy. So why would you just blow it like you said, Rob? Like in the first minute, like what? Why are you doing this? This
right.
doesn't make sense, even for somebody who's watching the film for the first time. Like, wait, what's happening? What is he doing?
You already knew. You already
Yeah,
know. I mean, it was kind of like, shit in the bed, like, and then just being like, uh-oh, it was an accident. It's like, that wasn't an accident.
right. Now, who's gonna clean this shit up?
Right. And man, I hate to say it because I always say a good remake personally for me is a film you can walk away from, come back, especially if you've seen the original, and go, oh, okay, I know exactly where we're at, what's going on. Um, I thought the 2012 one had that and more. I thought it had good, knockbacks to the original. Um, up to date technology, up to date graphics for the time, and I know a lot of people right now are screaming at me throwing things at their TV
Yeah.
because they're like, that one was terrible. And I'm sorry, I didn't think it was that bad. Besides what I just said about giving away the whole movie right off the bat, it wasn't a total shit show, but the original is better.
Yeah, and again, people could say it because of nostalgia, whatever. I felt like just the story was better. I felt like they knew what they were doing. Paul Verhoeven, which we'll be referencing more of his films later on, but Paul Verhoeven, he knew what he was doing with the story. Like it was going along well. You were going on this ride with Arnold Schwarzenegger, like you said. You're not supposed to know anything. You're like Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. You're figuring it out, what's real, what's fake, as you watch the movie. If you blow it in the first couple of minutes, you already know. And I felt like they were doing what they were doing around this time, which was just putting a bunch of big name actors like John Cho, Jessica Biel, Colin Farrell, Bryan Cranston, all these people in your face to be like, oh, this is going to be good. And it's a remake. Okay, it should be good. And it just turns out to be bad. Like they knew that they didn't have what they wanted. They just had the script, they had the name, but they had no. It's another one of these things where it's like it had no soul. It's like Point Break.
You know what? I've never heard a good argument against why I shouldn't like that film until now. You're absolutely right, Steve, because the biggest part and the biggest disappointment of it was that they didn't go to Mars. And for me, that was a lot of me going to people like, why do you care that bad? But in hindsight, they didn't add nothing new. It's not like they went to Atlantis. It's not like they went into the ocean. They didn't. It was just, there.
I mean, the Mars thing is pretty big. He goes to Mars to save, to have people get air and stuff like that, which is a pretty good thing where corporations now determine if you get air. It's just something about the remake
Evil
where,
corporations doing their corporation-y things.
Gene doing their corporation. It's just like, I don't know, man. The effects are cool if you like it. I don't think Colin. I'm going to say this. I don't think Colin Farrell was bad. I will say that I don't think he was bad in the film. I just don't think the film was. Why did you have to call it Total Recall, bro? You could have called it anything else.
Yeah, you could have called it Recall Total, and it would have been fine.
I would have been cool with that. Like, oh, sweet.
Okay, they're saying they like it, but not, All right, here's one that we're gonna go ahead and mention because I won't lie, I've never been a fan of these films. I almost wish I could like the remake because I don't like the original at all. I know a lot of people that love them. Word out to my homie Nick who loves these films. God, I'm just gonna bring it out there. RoboCop 1987 and RoboCop 2014. Fuck. Let's see. So. I never knew. I never thought it'd be. So, again, Paul Verhoeven directed this movie. Writers Edward Normir and Michael Miner. Starred Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, and Dan O'Halloran. And then we had RoboCop 2014, which was directed by Jose Padilla. Writers Joshua Sutamer, Edward Newmere, Michael Miner wrote this one. See, Steve. Starred Joel Kinnaman, Gary Oldman, and Michael Keaton, of all people, in the 2014 RoboCop. So for those of you who have never seen RoboCop, or you're like me who don't really give a shit, sorry, I'm just kidding. For those of you who like RoboCop, it's basically about a dystopian future where basically Detroit is just crime ridden, and basically all the cities are, and they basically rig up a terminally wounded cop who returns as a cyborg named RoboCop who puts a stop to crime. That's the films. Sorry, Steve, you can jump in anytime here.
So let me clean this up for what Rob was saying. Basically, this is a turn on like what cyberpunk world is, where there's like machines in the 80s. You know how like 80s did, right? Where they're like, we're gonna go into the future, but they don't really look that far. So it's like 2009 or whatever like that, whatever the time frame was in the original one. But anyways, it's like a cop. He gets killed. They do this experiment. It's like the $1 Million Man, where they're like, well, let's just make a robot, like a super cop type of deal. And then he kind of struggles with his identity because he's a machine.
See the cop that can't be stopped.
Yeah, he's like a machine, but he like he wants to be like himself as well. But the cool thing about the original was it was taking chances in film, which it wasn't done before with effects, with I will say it wasn't like when I first saw RoboCop as a kid, I was like, this Terminator was like, when they were like, oh, Terminator versus RoboCop, I was like, well, Terminator. I was like, Terminator. I hate RoboCop. He looks dumb. He walks dumb. But
he was in WCW's wrestling.
He was. Oh my God, you're gonna bring that up?
He was Sting's tag team partner, Steve.
Sting has been tased by the Horseman, but here comes RoboCop, Bob.
He didn't show up just once, but twice. But that'd be another time where we have to review old WCW things. But Yeah, man. Like the original, there's really nothing much I could say. You have to watch this film. It's you can see the nostalgia and just the I don't know, like all the actors are having fun while doing it, and you could just see the actual creativity. The remake, just like we said in the other remakes, it's just a soulless remake for a cash grab where there were some special effects. They throw out a bunch of money for them as well as the actors and actresses. You had some pretty big names in there. Samuel L. Jackson was in it, which I forgot. Gary Oldman, like you said, Michael Keaton. What are you doing
What are
here,
you
right?
doing?
But he's doing it for the cash grab, and they were like, well, let's just make them. This is the time where they were just remaking anything, and it was just soulless, bro. Like there was just they did this story again, and they didn't really do anything new. It was just not worth. It's not worth your time.
So speaking of soulless, speaking of cash grabs, speaking of films they did just to do, here's a few that we're gonna add to this list to wrap this up because while the first two I'm gonna name, you can kind of say, okay, that's up in the air, because I didn't really mind the remake too much. I personally think they're crap still, but they've just been remade a lot and the sequels have been done so much. It's kind of like whatever at this point. What you like is what you like. So the first one I'm gonna mention is Child's Play. The remake that recently came out was absolutely atrocious. The
Yeah.
2019 one definitely made you love the original. Friday the 13th, I think, is kind of an obvious one because that one has been redone. I mean, you can go as far back as saying Jason X is the one that did this, but the Friday the 13th remake was absolutely, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it was, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. The original, I think, is still a lot better. Here's one though that absolutely does piss me off to the point of where I'm like, okay, this one you had no excuse for. Again, came out around the same time as Total Recall,
Yeah. Yep.
and that was Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. My God, Steve. This one, it has a 5
Was
out of
it that
10.
bad though?
Yes,
Was that
it has
bad?
it has a 5 out of 10, first of all, on IMDb, and that's bad enough. Directed by Samuel Baer, and writers Wesley Strick, Eric Hisser, and it had Wes Craven. Um, it had Jackie Earl Haley, Rudy Marr, and Kyle Gladner. Um, my God, when I first seen this, trust me, I was actually open for a Nightmare on Elm Street remake, and I am a huge fan of Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the one horror genre
Mhm.
I stick to a lot that I love. You guys know that. I can talk about them all day because I think they're the best horror franchise that was ever created. Anyway,
Oh my
hold on,
god.
sorry. This one, however, though, it pulled the Total Recall, Steve. Okay, so you had the Nightmare on Elm Street premise, and they did a pretty good job of recreating the first movie. However, though, what I could not understand, and it was one of those WTF, mate moments, was that the kids would fall into the dream and you would know they were dreaming. And automatically, I was not afraid anymore.
Hmm.
I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You're going to give away the fact that they're in a dream. What made the originals so terrifying is the fact you never knew when they were dreaming or when they were awake. Especially when they were like, oh, I haven't slept in like days, and all of a sudden they're like doing something normal, and Freddy just jumps out of the phone or licks them or does something crazy like that. That was way more
Yeah.
frightening than to know they were already in the dream world.
Right. Yeah. That was really weird, bro. I don't know why they did that. Again, giving away the premise early in a film like that rather than waiting for the film to go. And it just that alone just makes you think they don't even have confidence in their film.
Right.
They know people are going to be like, this is a trash film, so we're just going to give away the premise right away. It's like, okay, then why are we watching this right now?
That was one I was insanely disappointed in. And again, that is going to be on the list of remakes so bad that they make you love the original. And that is going to actually be this episode, all of our Real Sharks. Thank you for joining us. It has been your hosts, Zekele and Stevens. with Sid Robs. And we will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good night. Yeah.